Welcome to my channel Pimby Beauty. If you are new to my channel, my name is Juliana. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Perfect Spring palette in my collection. If you're not new to my channel, you know I am a multi-palette user. It's very rare for me to use a palette, one single palette, unless I'm reviewing it. Most of the time, I tend to use 2 or more palettes for any particular look, and that's just the way I like it. I mean, I do have perfect palettes in my collection that I could just use on their own, but my preference, no matter how perfect they are, 95% of the time I like to combine palettes. It's just more fun for me, and I'm going to try in this video to show you how I will use this spring palette in my collection. Just to point out, as I often say, I'm not limited to a color story or a season when it comes to palette. I can use a fall palette in spring, I can use a fall palette in the summer, I can use a summer palette, you know, a bright color even in the winter. I really don't care and I don't mind. I just use whatever palette that comes to hand, really. I mean, at the moment I'm doing palette rotation. I tend to kind of pick out my palette according to the season. For example, some of this spring palette I'm going to be showing you, they are already my rotation from March. Yeah, I have to say, because of the rotation, these days tending to use palette according to whatever season or according to whatever that month is. For example, in February, the week that Valentine fell in, most of the palettes I picked out were kind of like pink toned, and then for St. Patrick's I had a lot of green palettes. So I've sort of been incorporating whatever is going on, you know, around me or in the world within my palette selection. So that's possibly what's going to happen for the next few months. So these palettes that you're going to be seeing in this video, you're going to be seeing them on my Instagram in one look or the other. Alright, that's enough intro. Let's get into the palette. Okay, the first palette I'm going to be showing you, which is really a perfect spring palette, and I believe they actually brought out this palette during spring last year. This is Nomad Paradise Pacific, I want to say. Yeah, Paradise Islands palette. Anyway, that is the packaging and that's the inside of the palette. So it is a beautiful and perfect spring palette. In fact, I did a look with this palette about, honestly, about 3 weeks ago. The look is on my Instagram, or if I can show you as well, I'll put it on the screen. But yeah, this is a beautiful spring palette. Alright, the next 3 palettes I'm going to be likely using together. These are the 3 palettes. So this one is Garden of Juvias, and it's from Juvias Place. This is Refresh Jam Rock Rebirth from Playing in Makeup by Yolondo, and this is one of the Scooby-Doo palettes. I think this one is the Raw Raggy. These 3 are perfect for each other, and I will show you why I will most likely be combining the 3 palettes. Now, the Garden of Juvias is simply a pastel palette, really. It is a pastel palette that will possibly work, you know, on all skin tones. So this is what that looks like. So as you can see, it hasn't got real depth to it. Yeah, it's got medium tone range of mattes to kind of possibly for the mid part of the lid, but not for the outer corner. So most of the time I do like my look to have depth. For this look, I did not darken there was no depth with matte shades basically. So this is unlike me. I don't think I've ever done this kind of look before where I have just light colors all over my lid, and that's what I did, and then I put shimmer all through. Yeah, I don't think I've ever done that, at least not for any video. So if I was doing this kind of look, yes, this palette is perfect for it, because it's just like a medium tone range matte and then slapping shimmer on top of it. Yeah, this would be perfect. But like I said, I don't tend to do that kind of look. So where the Jam Rock Rebirth comes in is it gives me more option with this. So as you can see more darker mattes in combination with this, but they go so well together. But even with this, even if I want like an extra depth, I still can find it within this palette, and that's where the Glam Light palette comes in. So the Glam Light palette is a very deep palette that I think it only has one light shade, and that's that one in the middle, this one. All the other mattes, they are really dark. Yeah, so that's one thing about this palette. I absolutely love the palette. The shimmers, oh my days, if you don't have this palette, you need to get your hands on it. It's one of the best palette that came out of 2022. And if you look at it in combination with the Jam Rock, you can see that this is perfect to darken the outer corners. So with the green, with the teal, with the blue, it just works. It's just perfect. I'm going to try and put the 3 together. As you can see, this is perfect. This is perfect. Yeah, I can just see a whole week's look coming out of these 3 palettes alone. And these are the shimmers in the Scooby-Doo palette. I'm just going to quickly swatch that. I'm not going to be swatching all of the palette, but I have to swatch this one. This palette is unique and out of the world. I mean, look at that. That is beautiful. Both of the Scooby-Doo palettes, I don't know what they put in this palette. They are absolutely beautiful. Another 2 perfect palettes to be used together are these 2 palettes. This is the palette Topoli palette from Ace Beauty, and this is the, I don't even know what this one is called. This is the first Michaela palette with Glam Light. Now for me, with the Ace Beauty palette, I can use it on its own because I'm of a darker skin tone, but for a lighter skin tone person than me, yeah, there might be difficulties using this one because it hasn't got so many light shades, you know, for you to be able to have a very nice detailed look. Yeah, most of the shades in this palette are quite dark, but the Michaela palette is kind of like I want to say a mixed tone range kind of palette. Now for me, the beauty of this palette is really the last 3 rows. I made the first 2, I don't know, maybe blending shades or something. Yeah, but it's in combination with the Ace Beauty palette because the palette Topoli is just a mouthful. In combination with this palette is absolutely beautiful. I mean, look at these. So the top 2 rows of the Michaela palette is perfect to mix with the dark tones in this palette. So as you can see, the dark shades, the browns, the greens and everything, you've got like lighter tones in this palette. So for me, it will be an absolutely beautiful palette to combine together these 2. Alright, another beautiful spring palette is the Barbie palette. Yeah, this palette is in a category of its own. So yeah, I'm not even going to be pulling it up with any other palette. I've used this palette possibly, well, at least 15 times now. It's very hard to put this palette down, and I'm so grateful I'm doing the palette rotation because otherwise I'll end up with some palettes and some will just stay neglected in my collection. This is an absolutely beautiful palette. Absolutely beautiful. Every look I've created with this palette has turned out so beautiful. It is a perfect mixture of warm tones and cool tones. Now ordinarily I'm not really a cool tone person, but for whatever reason this palette is just, it's just perfect. It's just perfect. The mixture of the warm tones and the cool tones, it just makes this palette so unique and beautiful. And yeah, I've got to swatch at least 4 of the shimmer shades for you. Absolutely gorgeous palette. One of the best palettes again of 2022. And these are the shimmers. I mean, Glam Light, they just know how to do shimmers. They really know how to do shimmers. I mean, look at this. This is beautiful and unique. This palette gives you variety because, I mean, I don't know what shade or I don't know what colors that you might want to use that is not in this palette. I mean, look at this gorgeous pink graduating into purple, and your blue, your teal and your medium tone colors. It's just a beautiful palette. Definitely a perfect one for the spring. Okay, another beautiful spring palette for me is the Carnival palette Love Tahiti. So this is the Stacey Marie. I think this is the 3rd collaboration or 4th one, I can't remember, but this is the inside of the palette. Now if you look at the palette, you might be tempted to think, oh, this is a summer palette. For me, this is not a summer palette. It's a spring palette. When we get to summer and I do my summer palette, then you will see the difference between the spring and the summer. I've got some summer palette. I just literally, you open the palette and it screams summer. You know, they just scream summer. That there's no other season that you can slot it into. But this one I think is a perfect spring one because it's not too much in your face. The colors are not too much in your face, so they are bright but they are not too bright. Yeah, so this one, it just makes it so perfect, and it's such a mixture of colors as well. So you've got your purple, your orange, your green, your blues, your neutral tones. It's just perfect for the spring. It's, you know, it's like a palette that kind of eases you, you know, from the wintry months and then like an in-between, and then it eases you into summer. I think it's just perfect. Such a perfect palette. It's a perfect transition. Transition is the word I'm looking for. It's a perfect transition palette, you know, from the cold into the warmth. Yeah. And this is the Carnival palette. Alright, another one that screams summer, but to me is still not summer, and that's the Money Shot palette from Plouise. Now this is a very bright palette. It's actually two-toned. It's a two-stepped palette. So the bottom one, you kind of pull it out. So the bottom one, yeah, definitely they are low-key, they are toned down. This arguably you could say is a fall palette, yeah, which technically is, but it's also got some nice beautiful spring shades in it. So this one I could say it's definitely could go for a fall or spring, but the top part really is why I pulled this palette out, and this is this greens. Yeah, you could say this is a summer set of shades, but for me it is spring, because the greens are not the lighter greens are kind of like pastel-y, and then the darker greens are kind of muted, so they're not so much in your face, unlike, you know, like your bright summery kind of greens. These are not so much, so it's like a perfect mixture of it's extreme. This part is like light, and then this part is like dark, and then you've got your middle, which is a perfect mixture of the light and then the dark shade. So to me it just kind of screams spring rather than summer, and I love it for that. Again, this is like another transitional kind of shade, but I think it's perfect for the spring. I'm not going to swatch it, but these are 4 of the shimmers in that palette. This is absolutely beautiful, and honestly all I see is, you know, when the leaves are growing back again and the grass is getting fresher and green, you know, recovering from all the whatever might have happened to it in the winter. This is what these colors remind me of, you know, the freshness, you know, of the season changing. Yeah, absolutely beautiful and unique. Okay, another 2 palettes that are perfect for each other and which I'm going to be using together. One of them is the OPV Tropical Dreams palette. OPV is a UK brand, and then is Beauty Tropical Vibes. Yeah, this palette are so beautiful together because they are so complementary. Some of the mattes here that don't have a shimmer shade have the shimmer shade here. Wait until I open the palettes. I'll show you separately first. So this is the Ace Beauty one, and this is the inside of the Tropical Vibes palette, and this is the OPV one, Tropical Dreams. Yeah, this, I hate the background of this palette. It makes it so hard to show you. If I bring it, yeah, that's perfect. It's only when I bring it closer that you can really see the colors. So I'm going to try when I show them together. Just, I mean, kind of like capture this in your memory. Now look at the 2 of them together. Absolutely beautiful. I wish I can bring it. Okay, I'm going to try my best to bring them closer. It's not going to fit within the frame, but I think you get the gist. They are absolutely beautiful together. Look at that. Yeah, so the mattes in this palette, they've got shimmers in this palette, and the mattes, some of the mattes in this palette, they've got shimmers in this palette. It is just absolutely beautiful combination together. The Tropical Dreams palette has got more shimmers than the Tropical Vibes palette, and for me, I'm a shimmer girl, so to have more shimmers as options for this matte, it just makes it so perfect together. Yeah, so these are 2 of the palettes I'm going to be using this spring. Alright, another 3 palettes I'm most likely going to be using together, and one of them is the part of the Beauty Bay collection, the Jungle Book. I think this particular one is called Jungle Book. It's got other parts. I've got a video on my channel featuring these palettes. The second one is the Ethereal palette from Goman Girls Cosmetics, and then the third one is Lucid Dreams from Pink Crush Cosmetics. For me, as far as I'm concerned, when I look at these 3 palettes, I just see them working together. You know, either I need a matte in one palette or I need a shimmer in another palette. So this is the Beauty Bay together with the Lucid Dreams palette, and then this is the Ethereal palette. Absolutely gorgeous palette. Let me show you this and the Beauty Bay one first. Okay, this is the Ethereal palette with the Beauty Bay palette. As you can see, it is absolutely beautiful. This is all matte and this is all shimmers. I mean, these 2 alone, they are perfect. So this is what I intend maybe for like crease colors, and then these are the shimmers. And then to add them depth to the looks, this is where the Lucid Dreams palette comes from. So the 3 are so complementary of each other. And for me, I just think that the 3 colors bring out the best in each other, and they are just going to be perfect. Yeah, I'm so looking forward to this one actually, because the options and the possibilities of the looks that can be created from the 3 palettes are just going to be so beautiful, especially with the gorgeous shades in the Ethereal palette. Oh, absolutely gorgeous palette. Yeah, I can't wait. So yeah, these 3 palettes are going to be one of my spring palettes. Okay, I pulled these 2 out again to be used together. Now for me, for my skin tone, I am perfectly okay using this palette on its own without reaching for another palette. But the palette has got like deep shades, yeah. especially for the matte. Yeah, if you are lighter than me, it'll be very difficult to use this palette on its own, you know, with no other lighter shade, you know, for the crease or something. But for me, I can use this on its own, and I'm quite happy to use this on its own. But if I was going to combine it with any other palette, then I pick this one up. This is Radiology Red palette from Plain in Makeup by Yolondo, and I think the two are absolutely beautiful together. Yeah, this I often get frustrated because, I mean, the looks you can create from it is very limited, really. Yeah, and because all the 6 shades don't really go together apart from the orange, unless I'm creating looks where the lower lid is a completely different color, the upper lid is a completely different colors, you know, without kind of like mixing all the colors together. Yeah, then this is perfect. If I want a satisfactory look, this is not a palette I can use on its own. Yeah, so for me, I'm definitely going to be pulling it and using it together with a different palette, but I think these two are perfect for each other. Okay, another 2 palettes I'll be combining is the Berries palette from Juvias Place and the Cotton Candy from BH Cosmetic. Now, something puts me off this palette. As much as I love the palette, for whatever reason, I just see it as, I don't know, too much of a sweet thing. Kind of like looks like an overloaded palette in terms of sweetness, you know, because of the shades. I don't know, for whatever reason, it's just not a palette I like to use on its own. Even though it's very, very possible to use on its own, I find it so, I don't want to call it boring, but I want to say one-sided, one track kind of palette. Yeah, so this is why I put it together with the Berries palette, and I think between the two, this makes it look more, it dilutes the sweetness, if you like. That's the best way I can describe it. It's like this is too sweet, but this kind of like dilutes the sweetness of this palette, and it gives it a more variety. So that way I can end up with a different look as opposed to the kind of looks I can create with this palette on its own. Yeah, that's the best way, yeah, I can describe it. The best idea for me to put this palette to use is to kind of combine it with a kind of, I want to say, not so different color, but colors that will enhance, you know, the shades in this palette. And I think these two will be so beautiful together, and definitely perfect for the spring. Alright, next 2 palettes I'll be using together, although this palette I could use on its own. Perfect on its own, yeah, and perfect with other palettes, yeah, but I do find a problem with the layout of this palette. It puts me off. If you can look at the palette and the shades without the background, yeah, you will see the beauty in this palette. Look at it in columns rather than in rows. It's absolutely beautiful, because if you look at the different column, the color story is in columns, so you can use it together. So you've got your purple, your blue, your orangey peach, your pink, your green, and the neutral tones on this side. So it's absolutely beautiful. Creating a look from it is not the problem with this palette. It's just I really hate the backgrounds, and it just put me off. But it's an absolutely beautiful palette, so I can use this palette on its own, but for me, I'm going to be using it with other palette. So I thought of the perfect palette to use with this palette because it's already adequate on its own, but I thought the fun thing to do is either maybe use it with a shimmer only palette, but the palette I actually put is a glitter palette. So I'm going to be careful because one of it I kind of moved it around and it sort of fell out. It's got like adhesive in it. I don't know how to even explain it. This is a glitter palette that doesn't need any glitter glue, so it adheres to your lid on its own. So it's kind of like sticky. I don't know what holds it together, but I'm still going to be very careful. So yeah, this is from Plain in Makeup by Yolondo, and it's the glitter 2 palette. This is not glitter that you put on your eyes and it will fall over your face. You can wear this out. You can even wear it to work. It's not going to fall. Once it's on your lid, it's on your lid and it's going to stay put. But the 2 of them together, I think it's going to be absolutely beautiful. And with this glitter palette, you don't need to like add a little. You can just, you know, add a little speck just to enhance your look. So I picked up just a little just to show you. So you can literally just tap on your lid and it just stays there, and it gives you like an extra oomph. See, as you can see, it's not like too in your face, but it just add a little bit of something, you know, onto your look. So whether you apply it over a shimmer or you apply it directly on a matte, it's just, it adds beauty to your look. So you don't have to think, oh yeah, it's glitter, I can't use glitter anywhere, I can't use glitter at all. You don't really have to overload your look. You just need to tap a little and it just gives a little bit of extra oomph, you know. That's why I like the palette. And also the fact that I don't have to use a glitter glue or a glitter primer or just you know, fuss over shades. This is just so easy to use. This is another shade in the palette, a nice beautiful apple green. I'm just going to tap that on this side as well. I mean, look at that. That just gives it a bit of an oomph. Let me just bring you a little bit closer. Yeah, can you just see that green here, the purple there? It just gives it a little bit of a oomph, and you know, just a little bit of extra to your look. Yeah, so I just had to add it, you know, to my collection for the spring because it's a perfect color story for the springs. So the shades are not too dark or too bright. They're just perfect, like an in-between shade, you know, perfect for the spring. Yeah, so this is going to be one of the palettes I'm going to be using this spring. Absolutely beautiful combination. I can't wait. Yeah. Alright, the next palettes are actually 4 in total because I don't have on their own, well, most of them on their own, I just feel like they are lost, especially these two. Let me show you all the 4 first. So this is Alice in Wonderland, one of the combinations from Beauty Bay, and then the Unheartedly Cosmetics and Not Normal palette. This is a palette that I just, it's like lost in my collection. I don't have a place for it. I don't think of it. It's just hard. It's just not exciting to pick up or use. And then you have the Technique Days from Beauty Bay. Not that it can be used on its own, but it's one I feel like it works better with other palettes. And lastly, this is the Hummingbird palette from Oden's Eyes Cosmetic. This is the collaboration with Tina. Yeah, now I've used this palette on its own. I have a look on my channel again using this palette. So I'm going to start with it. This is absolutely beautiful. This is beautiful on its own, but these are dark colors again. So all of the shades in this palette are dark, especially, you know, the matte. There's no light matte. There are 1 or 2 light shimmers, but there's no light matte. Alright, let's start with this two. As you can see, there are light matte in here, which complements the Tina palette so much. So that's one of the reasons why I pulled it out. And then from the Technique Days palette from Beauty Bay. So this gives it, I want to say, an intro to summer effect. I absolutely love these two together. I mean, look at this. This is like you've got lighter matte and lighter versions, you know, to mix with the dark shades in this palette. It's just so beautiful together. And then when I combine all the other 3 with the Not Normal palette, it just makes this palette usable, in my opinion. It makes it more attractive. On its own, it's just, I don't know, there's something about it that just, I look at it and I feel a bit down. I don't know how to explain it. Whether it's the cool tones it has, 1 or 2 shades are beautiful. If I were to use the palette, I'll possibly keep on going to about 3 shades in the palette, but there's just something about it that is not exciting at all. But when you mix it with this other palette, I think it brings out something out of it. At least when you look at the dark colors, this pulls it out, and I begin to see possibilities, you know, looks I can create with the palettes together. I'm just going to put it against the other 2. So this is the Technique Days from Beauty Bay, and then in combination with Tina palette, you begin to see possibilities, more possibilities, you know, where you can take this palette to. Yeah, that's the way I just see the palette. And then lastly with the Beauty Bay ones. Yeah, so together all these 4, they just bring more possibility and excitement for me. So yeah, I'm looking forward to using all the 4 palettes. I mean, I don't necessarily have to use all the 4 palettes at the same time, but any of the other 3 definitely creates more excitement, you know, for me to use this palette. And yeah, that's the way I'm going to be using them, all the 4 palettes. 2 of the palettes, 3 of the palettes, you know, yeah, in some sort of combination or the other. That's what I'm looking forward to for the spring. Okay, we are nearly there, so I think, well, I'm going to limit it to 3 palettes. I've still got more, but I'm just going to limit it to the next 3. So this is the Carnival palette from Uma Beauty, and this is absolutely gorgeous. Now I don't see this as a summer palette, it's just not complete. For me, it's a spring palette, and it's so perfect for the spring. Now this palette can be used on its own, and it can also be used in combination with any other palette. Now for me, if I were using this on its own, I probably would be able to create maybe 3 looks out of it if I really want it to my taste, maybe about 3 looks. But if I use it with other palettes, yes, I'll definitely be able to create more looks. Yeah, but this is one of the palettes I'll be using in the spring. Next one is Look for Rainbows from Gloss Girls. This is absolutely beautiful. I mean, this can be a summer palette as well, but again, I've got more colorful, you know, palettes, you know, for the summer. But this is an absolutely beautiful spring. Now I featured this in some videos on my channel. Recently it was in a ranking when I was ranking all my shimmer palettes. I did do some swatches, I believe, so if you want to see swatches of the palette, then please look at that video. But this is absolutely beautiful. I'm just going to bring you closer. I mean, look at the shifts in this palette. I'm working on swatching all of this palettes on my Instagram as well, but it's absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. Yeah, I am looking forward to creating more looks, you know, in the spring with this palette. Absolutely gorgeous. Please follow me on my Instagram so you can see all the looks I create with all those palettes. And then lastly, this is Icebreaker palette from Slay Ready Cosmetics. I have to admit this is a difficult one for me, really, in terms of placing it in any season. I mean, like I said, I really don't care about season or whatever. I just use the palette I feel like using. So opening this palette, this is one of the ones I feel like using in the spring. But I have to admit, it doesn't scream spring to me. It doesn't even scream. I don't even know where to categorize the palette, because it's kind of like a perfect mixture of colors for whole season. So it really can fall into, you know, whatever. You can fall into summer, you can fall into fall, you can fall into winter or spring. But for me, I am pulling it out for the spring. It's kind of reflecting. So let me bring it closer. This palette is absolutely gorgeous, especially that shade. Oh my, I don't even know what that shade is. I think I've kind of swatched it before in one video, and I also have a look on my Instagram with this palette. Yeah, these are the 5 shimmers in that palette. This is the magical shade. This is absolutely beautiful. Let me swatch the one on my thumb upside down. So that's one of the shades. This is the magical one. Is a multi-chrome, but it's so unusual. I've never seen a color like that in any single or in any of my palettes. You see that shade? I don't know what color it is. It's like it's red. Okay, as I'm bending my arm like this, I can see red, but I don't think you are seeing red on the screen. I can't really think it's green on the screen. It is absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I think it's a gorgeous palette, and you know, the kind of looks and the number of looks you can create: blue, purple, you know, brown, I don't even know what this one is, reddish, burgundy. You can also create green as well. So it's like at least 6 tones of colors that you can use, because if you use that to darken the outer corner, all this to darken the outer corner, yeah, definitely this. So you're looking at least 5 different combinations at least, you know, with this palette. Absolutely beautiful. I'm looking forward to using all those palettes. Yeah, for me, I think the next 3 months are at least what I would want to call spring. So maybe when we hit July is when summer comes in. Yeah, so for the next 3 months or so, these are all the palettes I'll be using. I will also be using them with my self-curated palettes. As mentioned at the beginning of this video, I mentioned I do palette rotation on Instagram. So every week I change the set of palettes I use. But I've decided in the first 2 weeks of April, it's going to be all self-curated palettes. So these are palettes I've created from my singles or from palettes that are magnetic, like for example Natasha Denona or Depth Cosmetics. So all the palettes I've created using this, mixing them together, those are the ones I'll be using for the first 2 weeks of April. Then once I've gotten over the first 2 weeks, then I'm going to dive more into my spring palette. I mean, I've been using them already from March. It's going to be a lot of fun for me in the next 3 months using all those palettes and just mixing them together, matching. I mean, some of the palettes I've not shown today I will definitely be using. You know, it's whatever comes to hand, but these ones in particular I intend to create looks with them, and I'm hoping I'm able to post them on Instagram. In any typical week I do high looks at least 4 different days, sometimes even 5 out of 7 days I definitely do high looks. Now some of them are more tame than others, like weekdays when I go to work, sometimes it's like tame colors or whatever, and sometimes it's as colorful as anything. But these are the palettes I'll be using anyway for the next 3 months. So I'll put my Instagram on the screen. Please follow me on Instagram so you can see some of these looks. Alright guys, that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed seeing my spring palettes, and you've enjoyed seeing my collection, and you've enjoyed hanging out with me, most importantly. If you've enjoyed this video, please like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you on this platform. And until next time, I'll see you.